Oh, karena kamu
നമ്മള് ഹലോ ഹലോ
ഹലോ
സൗണ്ട് ക്ലിയർ അല്ലേ?
അതെ അതെ അതെ.
ഹലോ
കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ട് സർ.
ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ. ഹലോ ഹലോ ഞാൻ എനിക്ക് ആ ഷെയർ സ്ക്രീൻ ഒന്ന് ഓൺ ചെയ്യോ? അത് ബ്ലോക്ക്ഡ് ആണെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു, ഡിസേബിൾഡ് ആണ്. താങ്ക് യു.
Het is 11 uur.
ഇതൊന്നും പിടിച്ചില്ല നടുക്കുള്ളത്.
Good evening, everyone. There are no problems that cannot be solved with the power of human mind. In the Indian context, every year close to 8 lakh people are dead as the result of suicide. Suicide and suicide attempts have a ripple effect that impact on families, friends, and societies. Especially during the COVID pandemic, many of the youth is suffering from depression and other mental illness, which follows to suicide. Recently, we have come across many examples in and outside the university, which is both sad and shocking at the same time. On this note, Kizat Women's Studies Center, in association with Kizat Union, have initiated to conduct a suicide prevention program. I would like to invite everyone for the inaugural function.
ജോയിൻ ഒന്നുമില്ല. പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസ് ചാറ്റ് ഷെയർ സ്ക്രീൻ റെക്കോർഡ് റിയാക്ഷൻസ്
പിടിച്ച് ക്ലിക്ക് ചെയ്യ.
ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ
വണ്ടി മുടി മുടി ഇതിനെ കൂട്ടി വെട്ടിക്കളടെ പ്രാന്ത് സാധനം.
സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യട്ടെ.
പാർട്ടിസിപ്പൻസ് ചേച്ചി എനിക്കും സൂം വേണം.
Honorable Vice Chancellor of KISAT, Dr. K.N. Madhusudan, keynote speaker of the day, Dr. Manoj Terai,
അവർക്ക് ഏറ്റവും
Our guest of the day, Madam Tini Van Bothel, friends, colleagues, and my dear students. With the constantly rising number in suicides, India is sometimes called the suicide capital of the world. Such an unfortunate distinction is a worrying factor for all of us. Another issue of grave consequence is the fact that the suicide rate among youth in India is of alarming proportions. Even within the university community of CUSAT, we have heard about unfortunate incidents of suicides. The ongoing pandemic situation has created unprecedented levels of uncertainty and anxiety around the world. This adds another layer of risk to the already grim situation of mental health of our population. It is in the context that the Women's Studies Center of Cochin University of Science and Technology, in association with the University Students' Union, thought about conducting an awareness program on suicide prevention. We are fortunate to get the support of Dr. Manoj Tere and Professor Tini Van Bortel, who are renowned experts in this domain. With their support, we plan to take the initiative forward and create a helpline for suicide prevention aimed primarily at the members of university community and possibility to others too. We expect the support of various collectives within the university also for the success of this initiative. Coming to my duty, I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. K.N. Madhusudanan, who will inaugurate this program today. I extend a warm welcome to you, sir. Madam Tini Van Bortel is with us. She is the Professor of Global and Mental Health, University of East London and University of Cambridge, United Kingdom, who will speak on the topic Global Scenario of Issues of Suicide. Welcome you, Madam. I welcome Dr. Manoj Tere, Consultant Psychiatrist, MPFT and Kiel University, United Kingdom, and Director in Mind Hospital, Thrissur, who is with us to deliver keynote address. I welcome Ms. Agna Prem, Executive Member of Cochin University Union. I welcome all the participants today in this platform to this program. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it's time for inauguration. For that, I would like to welcome Honorable Vice Chancellor, Cochin University of Science and Technology, Dr. K.V. Madhusudanan, sir. Welcome, sir.
Friends, at the outset, let me congratulate Women's Studies Center and Cochin University Students Union for organizing an awareness program like this. We all know the importance of this topic and the help and awareness created on this subject. Mental distress, tension, pressure, all these aspects sometimes we don't give adequate attention, especially when we are dealing with our students. Our students sometimes they don't express themselves on different aspects. It is our duty to find whether they have any issues and problems and try to help them. So in that sense, this is a very good initiative. What we understand is we are going to create a voluntary group, help the students and the university community. Of course, in our society especially, this is a very, very important topic because the social transformation that is happening over a period of time in our society has created and a lot of issues, psychological issues. Our children. We have transformed socially in the sense that our family system that existed previously have changed, has undergone sea changes in the past few decades. So that our job environment, our academic environment, everything has changed. And we know that our young people sometimes find very difficult to cope with these kinds of changes. Also, the academic environment, if I say the pressure, peer pressure, study pressure, and so on, that is also increasing. And sometimes in the higher education, especially after graduation, the students have to compete for little number of opportunities. So the stress level is very high. So all these aspects which we need to address and try to make the life of our young people much better in a much peaceful mental situation. So in that sense, this is a very good initiative, and we have a very eminent experts to address the students and give them adequate training and help, guidance, and so on. So we have Professor Manoj Terail Kumar and Professor Van Bothel. They're eminent experts in this field, and I welcome both of them to our campus. With these few words, let me conclude. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now it's our time to listen our special guest. Today we have Professor Tini Van Bortel, ma'am, Professor of Global and Mental Health, De Montfort University and University of Cambridge, UK, as our special guest. Now I would like to welcome her. Welcome, ma'am, and have your words.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll try first to share my screen with you. Let me have a look. Can you see this first slide?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, fantastic. That's wonderful. Well, let me start by saying thank you so much. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event on this really important topic, as we have just heard. And a very special thank you to Vice Chancellor and also the Director of the Women's Institute for not only inviting me, but also hosting this. And a warm welcome and thank you as well to all of you participating today. I'm very heartened by seeing so many people present here. So yes, my name is Tine van Bortel. I'm Professor of Global Health and Wellbeing at De Montfort University, and I'm also Principal Investigator in Mental Health and Wellbeing at the University of Cambridge in the UK. I want to give you a very brief global contextualization to the keynote speech you will hear from Dr. Kumar, who will tell you in depth about the situation in India and Kerala more specifically, but also what you can do as change agents, and what we can collectively do as well. So I'll give you a little bit of that global context and global contextualization around it. So suicide prevention, let me go to the next screen. Can you see this? Just making sure everyone can
Yes,
see it.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am. Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you. Yes. So suicide prevention sits within the field of global mental health, and global mental health is actually still a relatively new discipline on the global challenges scene. So this has been developing over the past 15 years in recognition of mental health, as we just heard in the introduction as well, of mental health being a major global challenge globally. And it's now part of the global priority areas. And there are also big opportunities where we can have a positive impact to address these global challenges when we work together at local level and at global level. And why is this such a big challenge globally? Well, when we look at the impact of mental disorders alone already, then we see that in 2010, and this was 2010, that's 10 years ago, was estimated to be 870 billion US dollars to the world economy. And this is only projected to be more than double in 2030, and that's not too far off anymore. So you can imagine that the wider implications at economic level to the global economy, at local level to the global economy, but also at individual level, at family level, at community level, and society as a whole is huge, locally and globally. And mental health and substance use disorders make up actually the greatest economic cost of non-communicable diseases in low and middle income countries specifically. So urgent action is required. And that is exactly why the World Health Organization has made suicide prevention a global imperative. And why specifically suicide? Because suicide is a major public health issue globally as well as locally. And when we look at the statistics, when we look at the figures, we see that globally over 800,000 people die by suicide each year. And that equates to roughly every 40 seconds a person dying by suicide somewhere in the world. This is unimaginable. And yet most suicides are actually preventable. That's why the World Health Organization has brought out their first global report in 2014 on preventing suicide, a global imperative. And the three key aims in this report and of this action, global action, are to increase awareness of public health as a significant, to suicide as a significant public health issue globally, but also to make suicide prevention a higher priority on the global public health agenda, and also to encourage and to support countries to develop and to strengthen comprehensive suicide strategies in a multi-sectorial approach, because this is not something we can do alone. This requires really a multi-sectorial approach. And Dr. Kumar will say something more about this as well later on within the Kerala context. So despite this being a global public health problem, there are still major issues around tackling this. For instance, there are big taboos still, there is stigma around suicide, there is a lack of understanding and a lack of preparedness and awareness. But also, as we have just...
class.
Sorry? Did someone say something? Did someone want to ask something?
No, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. So we see, as we saw in the introduction as well, that globalization, but also societal challenges, and more recently now the pandemic, have made these issues worse, and especially among young people. And we see that as well in the UK. We have a big coronavirus study running where we look at the mental health impacts of the coronavirus pandemic on adults as well as adolescents in the UK context. And we see consistently that thoughts around self-harm and thoughts around suicide are increasing, and specifically among the younger people. So as we have heard in the introduction, this is definitely a topic of grave concern and that we need to tackle collectively. So I would say that now more than ever, we need to be able to help each other and support each other, and also to recognize the signs of distress in someone else, and also how we can assist a person who finds themselves in distress, or if you find yourself in distress, how you can recognize that within yourself and where you can find support. So together we can address this significant global challenge we are facing in relation to suicide. And we are all champions. We can be all champions, and we can be all change agents as well. So that brings me to SPOT. And I have had the great honor and pleasure to work together with Dr. Manoj Serayal Kumar from InMind, the Institute of Mind and Brain in Kerala, for the past few years. And one of the things we have been more recently focusing on is a suicide prevention online training, as well as a stigma, anti-stigma module we are developing around this as well. So one of the things that he is going to talk about now is the situation in India specifically, the situation in Kerala specifically, and then something more about suicide prevention and the suicide prevention online training that we can all engage with to recognize signs and also to help others in distress. So with this, I want to now hand over to Dr. Kumar to introduce the situation in India, Kerala, and also the SPOT. And I very much hope that you will find it engaging, that you will find it educational, because this is something we can all take our responsibility, and we can all help to tackle this global challenge around this major public health issue we are facing globally around suicide and to prevent suicide as well. So I want to thank you so very much for being here today. I want to thank you also so very much for inviting me. And I'm also looking forward to afterwards discussing this further with you. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the presentation as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Dr. Manoj Terayal, sir, for the keynote address. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tina, for the inspiring words and setting the scene for me to start looking at how suicide has already emerged and is actually having a more serious impact on life of people in Kerala. And thank you, Professor Madhusudanan, for the insightful comments on what is changing in Kerala and how we need to gear up to take on the challenges posed by the changes in the society that we are facing now. And Dr. Ajita, Director of the Women's Study Institute, for the great initiative in bringing a suicide prevention program and thinking about how in future we might be able to help our students, our local communities, and our wider general public. Thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Chinju, the research associate who has been in touch with us in the last few months to organize this. And thank you, Agna Prem, the University Union representative, because without university unions, immense support and encouragement, programs like this will not happen. And I would also like to, at the outset, make a kind of a thought in the way in future, Cochin University can be a leader for other universities where the university can make a pledge that every staff member, every academic collaborators, and every student within the university is emotionally literate to give them an opportunity to complete, for example, the sport online course and make a big declaration that as a university, we have taken our commitment to make every staff member, every researcher, every student prepared to help others in distress. So taking up sport as an official kind of a pledge for the new year on the way when the background of this pandemic might be a good thing to think about. And by the time we finish this today's discussion, maybe suppose it takes only 1 hour. In 1 hour in Kerala, in one place in Kerala, one person might have completed or died by suicide in 1 hour by the time we complete this. And at least 20 others would have made serious uh, attempts on their life. So in Kerala, this is a major public health emergency. So this is the place I base myself in Thrissur in Kerala. And as you can see, we believe in overcoming our difficulties. As a population in Kerala is a model to world in many areas, but we are also struggling with certain aspects, for example, like mental health issues and suicide. What we believe in, we shall overcome one day, actually, not someday, perhaps. We shall overcome these difficulties. As Tina was saying, together we can all change things. So just before we start, I want all of you to take just a moment to imagine something. If you want, if you prefer, you can close your eyes and just imagine in your mind's eye a person, a friend, a classmate, a work colleague, a person who you know very well. Just imagine that person. And imagine that this person has left you a suicide note saying goodbye to you, and you are just finding it out. In your mind's eye, see how you feel, not what thoughts emerge in your mind. How do you feel about this? Just if you wish, you can close your eyes and imagine this person who you care about, or your friend, or a classmate, or a colleague, and that the person has left you a suicide note saying goodbye. Now, open your eyes. I know it is most of the time when I do this, exercise with, with the groups, it's extremely painful to think about somebody we know has decided to end their life, or they have been forced to end their life. It's a very complex human act. It is extremely difficult for us to understand why that person has decided to do so and what has led them to do so. And it is the pain we feel when you do this is enormous, thinking about that. But the person who is actually going through that decision of ending their life, that pain is enormous. That's most impossible for any other person to actually feel the gravity of that pain. And as we have seen, a moment of imagination is creating so much pain in us. But what about people who are living, relatives, friends, family, who has lost somebody through suicide? That is the severe and lifelong impact suicide have on others. And as Professor Tina has mentioned about the economic cost, I will come to that late, because we are not actually realizing how much impact each suicide is having on our economy. Suicides are rare, they're unpredictable, they are poorly understood, and stigma and shame is a big factor. There are big factors that limit our ability to openly discuss about these issues. So in India, in the data shows that around 2.3 lakhs of individuals die by suicide every year. 2.3 lakhs. We know that the national data on suicide is not very much reliable because it is through the Crime Records Bureau. So in our country, suicide data is actually compiled by police. It is not compiled by health department or mental health professionals or any sort of individuals who has been trained to understand or study suicide in the community, but it is through police data. But we also know that our suicide rate is, even though it is 10.6 per 1 lakh population, officially, it might be many times that in reality. Being this event being organized by the Women's Institute, this is alarming that nearly 40% of all women who die in the world by suicide, 40% of all women who die in the suicide by suicide is from India. So India is the suicide capital of women suicide. Between states, we have a tenfold variation in suicide rate. But one of the most alarming for me and for the student community and for universities is this fact: the leading cause of death between age groups 15 and 39 in India is now suicide. The leading cause of death in the age group that the universities deal with is suicide, not cancer, not cardiac problems, not infections. It is suicide. And among all the suicides occur, two-thirds, 71% of all the suicide occur below the age of 44. So such a productive age group, so many years of human life lost through suicide. And when I say the economic cost to the society, I will come to that in a moment. So in Kerala, in 2019, around 9,000 people, 8,556 individuals, like me and you, like our friends, like our workmates, like our family members, 8,556 individuals died by suicide in 2019. The smallest panchayat in Kerala is Valapattanam. It has got 8,000 population. So in 1 year, in Kerala, one small panchayat, a big village itself is disappearing. So for each completed suicide, there are around minimum 10 to 20 severe suicide attempts. So that takes the Kerala's severe suicide attempts to 1,60,000. 1,60,000 individuals attempting to end their life through severe methods, severe means, severe intent in 1 year. And for each suicide, at least, or severe suicide attempt, at least 10 to 20 individuals are affected. It might be family members, neighbors, colleagues, classmates. So around 16 lakh Keralites are affected directly and indirectly by suicide and severe suicide attempt. So 1 in 20 of us every year is really troubled by, affected by suicide and suicidal attempts, severe suicidal attempts every year. So these numbers tell us that suicide and suicidal attempts are a major public health, social health problem in Kerala. So the official rate, I said the official rate is contested in the sense that studies from Tamil Nadu, so studies from elsewhere has suggested 10 times the official rate is the real suicide rate. You can, even in Kerala, where the death reporting is considered to be excellent, we know that death reporting in many parts of the country, if there is a suicide in a rural area, that will not be classified as suicide. That will be reported to authorities as death. That is the way the death is reported. For in India, death registration needs the family reporting that a person has died, and one of the panchayat members, councillors, supporting that information that this person has died by natural cause or whatever cause it is. So because suicide is a very stigmatizing topic and a shameful event for in many communities, it is underreported. So whatever numbers we see in the research data from the NCRB data is unreliable. And we also know that there are lots of individuals missing every year. Even in just in Kerala, a tiny state of India, 12,000 individuals are missing every year. And many missing people are actually as we look at the data from across the other countries, many missing people end up by dying through suicide. So we have to take the data from the police records, in the sense that it might be reporting only a part of the actual problem. And when it comes to how much a life costs, we know that there are methods, however crude they are, or there are methods to calculate the price the society puts on one human life. For example, in America, they will put 10 million US dollars for each life. And you might have heard about courts actually giving compensation based on those kind of data. So in India, it has been calculated by through studies that at least each life is cost 15 million, international in Indian rupees. So if you look at the whole suicide that is happening, it is actually trillions of Indian rupees, and it is 100,000 times the health expenditure of this country in a year. So if we are preventing suicide as a society, each prevented suicide is actually saving the society huge sums of money. But in India, human life in its policy and politics and process, we don't give much of a serious thought to the human life, individual human life that is lost. So that is why suicide or mental health doesn't come to the top priority for our communities and our policymakers. So if you look at the suicide scene in Kerala from the last 30 years, it is around 8,000 individuals die by suicide every year. It hasn't much changed. There has been some fluctuations from 7,000 to some years 9,000. But you can see that Kerala has maintained its top position in the country for many years. We have data from 1960s. We have studied the data, except for few years where Andaman Nicobar Islands, where the alcohol consumption is the top in the country, or Sikkim, Manipur, and one time Tamil Nadu, top in the list of number of suicide rate in the country. Most of the years, Kerala has topped the list in the country, and Kerala's suicide rate has always remained almost 3 times, 2 to 3 times high. The black line you can see is the national suicide rate in the graph, black line. But the top red graph, you can see the Kerala suicide rate. So Kerala has always had a higher suicide rate, up to 3 times the national average, and Kerala has most of the years topped the national of the state list, except few years. So what is happening in Kerala? If you look at the studies, the NCRB study, what is causing suicide is mainly reported as family problems. Nearly half of the problem root causes within the family or reported as family problems. Illness comes to a 22%. Illness might be physical illness or mental illness. Addiction, financial trouble, you can see lots of things which are actually indicating the friction within society, expectations and reality. What are people expecting from their life? What is the reality in life? What is the pressure? That is Professor, our Vice Chancellor mentioned about the exam stress and failures, unemployment. There are lots of expectations and reality gap appearing in these problems as well. So you can see that mental illness as such is not the main reason for suicide. That's also one thing to note, and we will come to that point again. So within the illness category, which actually account for 25% of suicide in Kerala, mental illness is half of it is reported as mental illness. Cancer and paralysis, etc., are also major issues. Because Keralites, we live longer, our life expectancy is longer, we have more cancers as well. So you can see that that issue in here as well. So who is who is dying by suicide? Is it in the media? Often it is depicted as the high-earning professionals who are stressed. They are the people who are dying by suicide. But it isn't. Actually, the case is daily wage earners and unemployed, and those are the main categories of people who actually die by suicide. So you are starting to see within the social structure which class, who in the social ladder is actually suffering and dying by suicide. Daily wage earners, that is manual laborers mainly, unemployed individuals, they form bulk of our suicides. And if you look at the another data is about looking at the income category, less than 1 lakh income a year. That is the lowest, socioeconomically, poor position. 68, two-thirds of suicide occur in that, economic group. And 6 to 10 lakhs, which are, higher earning employees, it is 2.7 percentage. So there is an overrepresentation of individuals of lower socioeconomic ladder position in the suicide group. Look at the education as well. That is also adding another layer of evidence to that assumption. No education, or up to fifth, up to eighth, you can take up to the 10th. That forms the bulk of the suicide is occurring in individuals who are poorly educated, or educated up to a certain degree, a certain level. And graduates and above are much less represented. And most people are married in the suicide group. It is also true, because this is the women study institute. This will be interesting for later discussion, because in many other Western countries, marriage provides some kind of protection to suicide. There are other factors to that, but at the same time, in India, marriage is not a protection. And we will now see later on, I will discuss few points why that is not providing protection. And the method that we adopt is, hanging seems to be the most common method. And because it is often easy to find a place to attach a rope or a lanyard or trees. So because the easy access, hanging continue to be the most common. And worldwide hanging is the most common method used to end one's life. Poison, especially insecticides in hilly districts of Kerala, is very much high. Drowning and self-immolation is, you can see that, self-immolation among female, 225 very high in that sense. So mainly hanging, poisoning by insecticides are the common methods. Let me see, Nashvia. Yeah. The methods vary across countries. You can imagine that in America, most suicide by firearms. America has a long-standing issue with the firearms licensing, which you might be aware of in the media discussions. America and Argentina have the commonest method adopted to die is firearm. In places like Hong Kong, Luxembourg, Malta with its steep rocks and the sea around it, jumping from height is the commonest method. And the South Koreans prefer poisoning with carbon monoxide. And poisoning with the drugs like paracetamol or other prescription drugs or illicit drugs seems to be very common method in Canada and Scandinavian countries and UK. But worldwide, there are three things that we need to think about: hanging, pesticide, and firearm. Why we need to think about that is any intervention, any prevention program at societal level, even at individual level, we need to be thinking about what are the methods by which a risk might be expressed. And gender issues. If you, I put this specifically for the team in QSAT to think about, and maybe somebody in your team might get interested in researching this further. We know that worldwide, more women have express suicidal ideas, and more women attempt suicide. It is very high compared with the men, but more men die by suicide. On the world level, global level, it might be 2 to 3 times more men die by suicide than women. Only two countries are exceptions. One is China, where women die by suicide more, and Bangladesh. And both, hello, there is somebody's mic needs to be muted. And and except China and Bangladesh, across all the countries, more men die by suicide. In India and China, one factor is emerging. In younger age group, now more women are dying by suicide. But the gender age gap is becoming less and less in younger age groups across the globe. So if you take younger age group below 25, the traditionally previously seen gender gap, that is more men dying by suicide, is less often seen. The gap is closing. So more women or equal men and women are dying in younger age groups. And young female suicide, even 14 or below, is increasing in many countries. This is what I wanted to discuss about within the group later on for discussion. Why perhaps marriage is less protective in countries like India, because of the implications of arranged marriage, early marriage, young motherhood status, low social status for women, and domestic violence, economic lack of economic independence. All these factors. For Kerala, I might add one factor: more women are more educated. If you take the proportion of degree holders, university education, more women are educated, but the participation in labor market for women is less than men. So there are some factors, structural factors for us to think about why mental health problems and suicide is different in men and women. And along with the gender paradox, why do men die more by suicide than women? We know alcohol use is more among men, and perhaps in Indian context, alcohol use is very much less in women. It is increasing. Men have more access to dangerous methods, because if you want to travel in the middle of the night away from home, to jump in front of a train, or to buy some dangerous dangerous medications, or you have to travel, you have to go out of the house. So all those mobility factor, even the mobilities within the household, it is contributing to the difference in gender. And you can say in a way that men are like pressure cookers without walls. Men generally tend not to talk about their emotions, and women are more likely to think about emotions and share those emotions with others. And that might be a difference that contribute to the final outcome. And cultural barriers in seeking help. The cultural models men in our communities follow is that of, they don't talk about depression, they don't talk about anxiety or stress. And there are barriers that this model creates in seeking help or talking about the difficulties. And certain social roles amplify certain reactions to loss and shame. If men are supposed to, by the social structure, creates a story, the narrative is that men look after others, or men are the breadwinners, or men are the heroes, or whatever, then that creates the pressure to act in certain ways. When there is loss, I am responsible. When there is shame, I am responsible. So I need to protect the honor of the family, so that responsibility angle also is perhaps culturally determined, socially determined. So that also might be contributing to more suicide. And why do Kerala have more suicide? Nobody knows. We don't know. There isn't any research. There are lots of suggestions, lots of assumptions, and lots of small studies which contribute to some narrative why it might be, um, what themes actually contribute to more suicide. We know alcohol consumption, 30%, one third of men consume alcohol. The average age of consuming alcohol is declining, but there are other states in India where the average per capita consumption of alcohol is higher than us. But Kerala has got more anxiety and depression. The national surveys show that more anxiety disorders and more depressive disorders reported in Kerala. Divorce rates are high and is increasing in Kerala compared with the many other states. Unemployment rate is high compared with the national average. And we also know of another Kerala paradox, that is the mortality and morbidity paradox. We have high morbidity rates, high morbidity in terms of physical ailments. Our morbidity rates tops the country, but our mortality rate is so low. So more people are living longer with a large number of physical ailments. So the quality of life and well-being, physical well-being, is compromised for many. And we know when physical health is compromised, emotional health is also compromised. And we have more women participating in education, but less women in the labor market. It has got different impact, to discuss how that might affect the mental health. And lifestyle factors. If you look at poverty, Kerala has been the state that has achieved more in eradicating poverty. We have the lowest poverty in the country, and the speed at which Kerala society has eradicated poverty is amazing. But if you look at the consumption inequality, Kerala tops. The consumption inequality, or what I call as relative poverty, is very high in Kerala, and Kerala actually tops the list. So 1 in 7 Indians are affected by mental disorders of varying severity. That we need to understand. As Professor Van Bottel said, it is just not the idea or the problem of suicide. It's a wider problem of mental health. And 1 in 7 Indians are affected by mental disorders. And if you look at those graphs, the red, in Kerala is here, the red, the darker red, shows that we have high anxiety and depression than the average of the country, or compared with other states. So we have more mental health problems in general. And look at these graphs. The poverty is lowest. This is all the states ranked in their poverty. Kerala is here. 8% of people are in absolute poverty. Only 8%. So, but the relative inequality, if you look at the relative inequality graph, that is about the consumption inequality. Kerala has the highest consumption inequality in the country. So that is why when you hear stories about a young girl aged 10 tries to take her life because she can't access online classes, because she hasn't got a good enough smartphone, or she hasn't got the wireless connectivity, it, it is actually a case showing how the consumption inequality in Kerala is high. And we need to read this in terms of the studies that shows that if you are a millionaire, if you are rich, but if you are living with more rich people, you are likely to die more early. So inequality is sometimes far more important than absolute poverty. The relative poverty in a society can be more toxic for mental health. So if you are living in an area where there are so many rich people living around you, with all the material consumerist culture around you, the relative inequality can be very toxic to your mental health from your birth onwards in various stages of your life. And that will accumulate, and that might contribute to mental health problems, including somebody being in a position where they don't actually think that life is worth living for. So for the students and for the policymakers and change agents in our society, like our participants today, this idea that the inequality is a major contributing factor to suicide is one thing important to bear in mind. And when we take the young people and suicide, there are certain ideas that we need to actually think about. We have among us, Professor Madhusudanan said earlier about the expectations and the peer pressure. Expectations are huge among the younger generation. We live in a state where there is zero or negative population growth. So for parents, the children are their biggest investment, emotional investment. And we live for our children. And their expectation on them is so huge. But if you look at the competition, the society is modeled on competition rather than cooperation. The number of people who are actually graduating might be less than 30%. So 70% of children or young adults are deemed as failures. And our idea of success is getting into some specific colleges or institutions, which only a minority can achieve. So majority of our younger population is left to believe in that they have failed themselves. They haven't lived up to the expectations of the society or their parents. So there is a huge gap between expectations and achievements, dreams and realities. And we are becoming a society perhaps more on competition than cooperation. And at the time of COVID, we have seen that cooperation, that is the only thing that is going to help us, all of us, to succeed, to live and to succeed. So we are seeing that examples in front of us every day why cooperation is much more of a social need to survive than competition. But our education system, our jobs markets are based on competition. So that is leaving thousands of people as failed class. And you need to think about, are we a compassionate society? Are we compassionate about our fellow beings, or are we becoming more cynical about others? Even good things, are we becoming more cynical about even good things happening in our society? Are we actually being more full of contempt to others? And as young people, are we actually helping them to innovate themselves, to find solutions for themselves, to find a path for themselves, to give them freedom to select their journey? Or are we as a society giving them instructions of success? Or are we actually giving them pre-made destinies? And are we actually having a society that is integrated to its everybody else? Or are we alienating from everybody else, living in bubbles of our own bubbles? Are our children, are our young people grounded in the reality of human life around us? Or are we disconnected into ourselves and our media existence? So in many Western countries, the idea of younger suicide, young people, especially in women, more suicide and self-harm coming in relation to how they perceive and use social media. The
It is 12 hours.
reality of one person's existence in relation to everybody else around them, rather than seeing themselves or in the social media, which is known as the curated self. You are living for others. So there are lots of themes that we need to discuss to understand why young people are perhaps dying more due to mental health problems. So in Kerala, in particularly, we know that there is the idea that we can achieve anything. There is the emancipation of the individual. We are free in some sense, in philosophical sense. We are more liberated politically. We are liberated socially. But at the same time, are we actually realizing that emancipation into our real life? And what happens to the competitive kind of educational system? How much is a failed class being created by that? And how much social mistrust is growing in our societies? How much we are losing sometimes the social cohesion? And what about the invisible toxicity of inequality in consumption, inequality which is the relative deprivation? So there are lots of themes and layers we need to examine to understand why Kerala has got higher suicide than other states. So in conclusion, what I would like to say is the rates of our suicide has been high, continue to be high. It is a major public health problem which we cannot avoid now. 1 in 5%, 1 in 20 of us are affected by direct or indirect consequences of suicide. And it is adding to the social and it is related to, it is derived from social and economic inequality within the society. And we as a society hasn't put enough resources to research, to study, to understand, to learn suicide and mental health problems in general. We do not have a robust mental health strategy. In many countries, even in UK, there is a minister for suicide prevention. In many countries, there are ministers and departments solely for mental health and suicide prevention, or well-being ministers. We need to think about new ways of actually leading our change policy and strategy for university unions and students to think about having a state youth suicide surveillance system. There are lots of things youth can actually think and organize and put pressure on the policymakers. So why did we come out with the sport suicide prevention online training? Because we believe that because suicide is actually rare and sometimes often unpredictable, and many a time the first attempters succeed. So if in the first attempt a person succeeds, there is no chance left for them to seek help because they have already lost their life. So we need to do something before people actually reach the point of attempting seriously on their life. And first expressions of this distress, this disenchantment with life, this death wish is expressed in the family context, with among friends and colleagues, not with healthcare providers, not with psychiatrists, not with psychologists, not with the mental health services, but within the family, friends, and colleagues. They come to know about these things for the first time. And we need to look at preparing them, that is, i.e., the general public, to identify and to offer the appropriate help at the right time. But that is about the emotional skills training. And in most of the suicide in India and Kerala are not due to severe mental illness. It is due to the what is known as the predicament. The life is coming to a limbo. And stigma, even in Kerala, where the education rate is very high, the stigma is preventing people from seeking help or talking about suicide. And in your office, in the research department, or in the classroom, nobody talks about how they feel about in their mind, or nobody talks about the pressures and anxiety and depression and death wish. So these are, even I'm saying that in the one-to-one friend context, people don't seek help when they feel they are feeling down in the dumps. And we know that most suicide can be prevented if appropriate help is given at the right time. And most people are not getting any help at all. So this makes us think that we need a public preparedness model, and that is what we are working with the sport. So this is an online course. You can register at your whenever you want. You can register and do the modules at your pace and speed. And for each chapter, there will be some feedback you need to give. And at the end and at the start, there are some questions that you need to answer to understand your current perceptions, ideas, knowledge. And later on, towards the end of the course, you can redo this. And if you succeed in the percentage, the course has said, you will get a certificate signed by Institute of Mind and Cambridge. So that is just a starting point, it's a starting point to think about and help others, thinking about helping others in distress. So it's a free course, and it might take up to 8 hours. And this is what I was at the beginning of this presentation I was talking about. Now, among all the universities in India, your university can actually lead to take the pledge that we can make every staff member, every student prepared to help fellow citizens in distress. And if they complete the course and get the certificate, we can do that. And the online course is free. Only thing is, sometimes some organization has suggested to us that they will give 1 day off, 1 day leave to finish the course. And they ask their staff members to do the course, produce the certificate, and they get in lieu 1 day off for completing the course. That is one big way of actually taking the responsibility as an organization to reduce the impact of mental health problems. Especially this is important at the time we are going through the pandemic. So there is a new 5S model. Myself and Tina, Professor Van Bottle has actually, created and developed. And that is a 5S model of suicide prevention for public preparedness. That is see somebody, whether they are in distress. Say something that is the right thing to say at that moment. Support the person practically, and signpost them to the further help, and stay in touch with the person until they are back to their self, so see, say, support, signpost, stay in touch. This is the 5S model the sport course will teach you through its 13 chapters. So thank you all for listening to this, and thank you, Professor Madhusudanan, Vice Chancellor of CUSAT. Thank you, Dr. Ajita, Director of Women's Studies Center, Chinchu, Research Associate, and all the participants for listening to this. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. And I'm sure, Tina, are you online? Hello. So it's very good to see a lot of people participating in this, and I hope we can have a good discussion now.
Thank you so much, sir. Now it's time for discussion. If anybody have any kind of questions or queries, you can ask both in Malayalam and English. So it's time for discussion. Anybody have any kind of queries, please come forward and ask.
യു ക്യാൻ ആസ്ക്. മലയാളത്തിലും ചോദിക്കാം, ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലും ചോദിക്കാം. ഇറ്റ്സ് ഓപ്പൺ ഫോർ ഡിസ്കഷൻ. നമുക്ക് തുറന്ന് സംസാരിക്കാം. വി ക്യാൻ ഓൾ ലേൺ ഫ്രം ഈച്ച് അതർ. നമ്മൾ ഓരോ ആളുകളുടെ അഭിപ്രായം വളരെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആണ്. ഒബ്സർവേഷൻ, നിരീക്ഷണങ്ങൾ വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ടതാണ്. നമുക്ക് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം.
Sir, actually, I have a question.
ചോദിക്കൂ.
Could you please explain about what is depression? I mean, the stages of depression. Nowadays, people, if we don't get anything or we seem sad, we all people says that I am in depression or I have depression. But I don't think depression is not a small word or it's not that much simple thing. So could you please explain what is depression and how it's come and what kind of thing we can do to solve that kind of problems as a mental issue?
ഓക്കെ, വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു ചോദ്യമാണത്. വാട്ട് ഈസ് ഡിപ്രഷൻ? വിഷാദം. നമ്മളെ സാധാരണ ഭാഷയിൽ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലാണെങ്കിൽ ഐ ആം ഡിപ്രസ്ഡ് എന്നുള്ളത് സാധാരണ നിത്യജീവിതത്തിൽ വളരെ ലാഘവത്തോട് കൂടിയിട്ട് നമ്മൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നൊരു വാക്കാണ് ഡിപ്രഷൻ. പക്ഷേ സാധാരണ വാക്കായിട്ട് ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്ന ഡിപ്രഷനും ഒരു വിഷാദ രോഗം എന്നുള്ള ഒരവസ്ഥയും തമ്മിൽ വളരെ വ്യത്യാസമുണ്ട്. 4 കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് ഡിപ്രഷൻ. ദർ ആർ 4 മേജർ തിങ്സ് ഇൻ ഡിപ്രഷൻ. വൺ ഈസ് നിങ്ങളുടെ ചിന്തകൾ, തോട്ട്സ്. രണ്ടാമത്തത് നിങ്ങളുടെ മൂഡ്, ഹൗ യു ഫീൽ ഇൻസൈഡ്. തേർഡ് ഈസ് യുവർ ബിഹേവിയർ, വാട്ട് ഡു യു ഡു. ഫോർത്ത് ഈസ് ഹൗ യുവർ സിസ്റ്റം ഈസ് വർക്കിംഗ്, ദ ബയോളജി, യുവർ ഫിസിക്കൽ സിസ്റ്റം, ആ ഫിസിയോളജിക്കൽ സിസ്റ്റം എങ്ങനെ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നു. ഈ 4 ഞാൻ പരിശോധിക്കാം. ഒന്ന് തോട്ട്സാണ്. ഇപ്പോൾ ഡിപ്രഷനുള്ള സമയത്ത് നമുക്ക് സ്ഥായിയായിട്ട് വരുന്ന ചിന്തകൾ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഡിപ്രസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള തോട്ട്സ് ഉണ്ടാവും, വളരെ നെഗറ്റീവായിട്ടുള്ള തോട്ട്സ് ഉണ്ടാവും, ഹെൽപ്ലെസ്നെസ് ഉണ്ടാവും, നിസ്സഹായ അവസ്ഥ ഉണ്ടാവും, എന്നെക്കൊണ്ടൊന്നും പറ്റില്ല, ഞാനൊരു പരാജയമായിരുന്നു, ഞാനൊരു പരാജയമാണ്, ഞാനൊരു പരാജയമാവും, ഐ ഫെയിൽഡ്, ഐ ആം ഫെയിലിംഗ്, ഐ വിൽ ഫെയിൽ. അപ്പോൾ പരാജയത്തെ സംബന്ധിച്ചുള്ള ഒരു ചിന്ത വരുന്നു, ഹെൽപ്ലെസ്നെസ്സിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ളൊരു ചിന്ത വരുന്നു, അതുപോലെ ഗിൽറ്റ് ഒരുപാട് വരുന്നു, ഷെയിം ഒരുപാട് വരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ കുറ്റബോധം വരും, നിരാശയുടെ കൂടെ തന്നെ നിസ്സഹായാവസ്ഥ വരും, പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാനൊന്നുമില്ല എന്നുള്ള. അപ്പോൾ ഭാവിയെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് നമുക്ക് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാനൊന്നുമില്ല. ഇപ്പോൾ ജീവിക്കുന്ന കാലമാണെങ്കിൽ കടുത്ത അന്ധകാരമാണ്, കഴിഞ്ഞു പോയതൊക്കെ ദുരന്തം മാത്രമാണ്. അപ്പോൾ കാലത്തെ നമ്മൾ മുഴുവൻ കാണുന്നത് ഈ കറുത്ത കണ്ണടയിലൂടെ ആവുന്നു, നമ്മളെ ചിന്തകൾ അങ്ങ് മാറുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ തോട്ട്സിൽ ഒരുപാട് മാറ്റമുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അത് എനിക്കിനി ജീവിച്ചിട്ട് കാര്യമില്ല എന്നുള്ളതിലേക്ക് എത്തുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ അത് സ്ഥായിയായിട്ടുണ്ടാവണം. ഇപ്പോൾ നമുക്കൊക്കെ തന്നെ ചില ദിവസം രാവിലെ എണീക്കുന്ന സമയത്തോ ഇന്നത്തെ കാര്യം ആലോചിക്കുമ്പോൾ ചില നിരാശയുള്ള ചിന്തകളൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടാകും. പക്ഷെ അതൊക്കെ ടെമ്പററി ആണ്, ട്രാൻസിയൻറ്റ്. വി ഓൾ ഹാവ് ട്രാൻസിയൻറ്റ് ഡിപ്രസീവ് ഐഡിയാസ്. ബട്ട് ഇൻ ക്ലിനിക്കൽ ഡിപ്രഷൻ, രോഗാവസ്ഥയിലാവുന്ന സമയത്ത് ദീസ് തോട്ട്സ് ബിക്കം പെർസിസ്റ്റൻറ്റ്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് ദ മോസ്റ്റ് ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ് ഫീച്ചർ. ദേ ബിക്കം പെർസിസ്റ്റൻറ്റ്. രാവിലെ വന്ന് എന്നെ കൊണ്ടൊന്നും പറ്റില്ല എന്നുള്ള ചിന്ത ഉച്ചയ്ക്കാകുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് മാറി നമ്മൾ കോൺഫിഡൻ്റായി കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ്. പക്ഷെ ആ നിസ്സഹായാവസ്ഥ എന്ന ചിന്ത സ്ഥായിയായിട്ട് തുടരുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് എ പ്രോബബ്ലി പാർട്ട് ഓഫ് ഡിപ്രഷൻ. സോ പെർസിസ്റ്റൻറ്റ് നെഗറ്റീവ് തോട്ട്സ്. രണ്ടാമത്തെ മൂഡാണ്. ഇപ്പോൾ മൂഡും നമ്മൾ മാറിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കും. ചില സമയത്ത് നമുക്ക് നിരാശയുണ്ടായിരിക്കും, ചില സമയത്ത് ആശങ്കയും ആകുലതയും വ്യാകുലതയും ഉത്കണ്ഠയും ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടാവും. പക്ഷേ അതും മാറിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കും. പക്ഷേ പെർസിസ്റ്റൻ്റ് ആയിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ഒരു സ്ഥായിയായുള്ള വിഷാദഭാവം ഉണ്ടാവുകയാണ്. ഒന്നിനോടും നമുക്ക് റിയാക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. ഫ്രണ്ട്സ് വിളിച്ചു, അപ്പോഴും അങ്ങനെ തന്നെ. വീട്ടുകാർ വിളിച്ചു, അവരെ അടുത്ത് വന്നിരുന്നു. നമ്മളുടെ ചുറ്റുപാടുകളുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളോടൊന്നും ഇൻറ്ററാക്ട് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മളെ മൂഡ് ലിഫ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമുക്ക് പറ്റുന്നില്ല. സാധാരണഗതിയിൽ നമ്മളൊരു പാട്ട് കേട്ടു, when you are listening to a music, when you are watching something, when you are interacting with your loved ones, when you are actually interacting with the nature outside, your mood lifts, you feel better. That is normal. But even in those situations, you feel sad. That is clinical depression. So there is no reactivity. Nothing is changing the way you are feeling inside. You feel dead inside. You feel sad inside. You feel horribly anxious inside. So that is a change in mood. So thoughts become persistently negative, mood become pathologically negative and persistently negative and pervasively negative. And then behavior changes. When we are depressed, we don't want to interact with others. We withdraw into ourselves. We close the doors. We try to sleep, or we might be in bed. We might not be asleep. So there is a behavioral change that is withdrawal. And if you watch somebody with depression walking, they walk with the shoulders drooping, looking down. So there is a lot of changes in the way we actually withdraw from others in our behaviors. And some people might drink more, some people might smoke more, some people might eat more, some people might not eat. So there are lots of behavioral changes to deal with the expressions of depression. And then what does the system do? System is slowing down, or it can, in a minority, it can be activated when there is agitated depression, where depression comes with a lot of increase in activity as well, restlessness, anxiety as well. But generally speaking, you will not be sleeping, and your sleep will have a characteristic like, you will get up early in the morning. If you feel that usually you get up at 6 in the morning, but you start to get up 3 in the morning and spend the early hours ruminating on negative things, that could be a significant warning sign of depression. So your sleep is affected, your appetite, രുചി പോയി, ഊണിന് ആശ കുറഞ്ഞു എന്നല്ലേ പറയാ, അല്ലേ? നിദ്ര നിശയെങ്കിൽ പോലും ഇല്ലാതായി, ഊണിന് ആശ കുറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പോൾ ഭക്ഷണത്തോട് താല്പര്യമില്ല, ഉറക്കമില്ലാതെയായി, നമ്മളെ സിസ്റ്റം സ്ലോ ഡൗൺ ചെയ്യാൻ തുടങ്ങി. ഇപ്പോൾ സാധാരണഗതിയിലുള്ള ലൈംഗികവും മറ്റൊക്കെ ആയുള്ള റൊമാൻറ്റിക് ആയുള്ള ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റുകളൊക്കെ പോകുന്നു. അങ്ങനെ സിസ്റ്റത്തിനകത്ത് മൊത്തത്തിൽ ഒരു ഡിപ്രസ്ഡ് ആയുള്ള ഒരു സ്റ്റേറ്റ് വരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ തോട്ട്സ് പെർസിസ്റ്റൻ്റ് ആയിട്ട് നെഗറ്റീവ് ആവുന്നു, മൂഡ് പെർസിസ്റ്റൻ്റ് ആയിട്ട് സാഡ്നെസ് പെർവേസീവായിട്ട് മാറുന്നു, ബിഹേവിയറിൽ ഒരുപാട് വിഡ്രോവൽ വരുന്നു, ബയോളജിക്കൽ സിസ്റ്റം സ്ലോ ഡൗൺ ചെയ്യുന്നു, അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ സ്ലീപ്പും അപ്പറ്റൈറ്റും എബിലിറ്റി ടു ഫോക്കസ്, ദീസ് ആർ ദ ഫണ്ടമെൻ്റൽ തിങ്സ് ഓൺ എബിലിറ്റി ടു കോൺസെൻട്രേറ്റ്, ഓൾ ദിസ് ഈസ് ഗോൺ. So that is different from the day-to-day, momentary, temporary, transient mood changes we all go through. We all have mood changes in a day, but this is a mood change in a particular direction with its impact and effect and manifestations in all major aspects of mental well-being, mental life. So that is depression. And depression, as you asked, is a significant contributor to suicide worldwide. So detecting depression early is one of the preventive strategies adopted worldwide. Detect depression early, help the person. That is one strategy at an individual level. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
So can I ask one question?
Sure, sir. Sure.
As students union and students, how are you going to deal with the mental well-being of your community?
So simply, I think we can support each other when they need somebody to talk, when they need to share their emotions or feelings to somebody. Then we can help them with an emotional support. Actually, in this current society, in the modern time, everybody need somebody to hear. Okay. So I think when someone feels really lonely, or they feel like they want to talk to someone, they need to share their feelings or emotions or their loneliness to someone. Then listen them without judgment. Okay, when somebody is ready to listen us without judging us, judging what we are doing or what we are thinking, that was really, really helpful. And when I feel sad, or my friends feel sad, or they need anybody to talk, I always try to be with them. So I think when teachers and all the people around them is try to, if they try to communicate with them without judgment or any conditions, terms and condition, then when people gone through these kind of some depression or anything, they can face all the difficulties with ease. So I think that's the simple thing we can do to another person and can support them. I think so.
That is exactly right, Fatima. To listen to others, to validate their experience, and not to judge others, and to keep an open mind. That is the fundamental thing in the conversation. I think Tina, you look like you want to add to that.
No, I completely agree. I think I just wanted to draw the comparison with our students as well. I work in 2 university organizations and collaborate with other universities as well in the UK. And we see exactly the same, Fatima, as what you were saying, that that peer-to-peer support, because there are different kinds of support, of course, and staff and student interactions, but the peer-to-peer support, as you pointed out, is really important. And from that point of view of that non-judgmental point of view, just sitting there listening, just a listening ear in a non-judgmental way can work absolute wonders for people. And we have seen that working very well with our students too. And also what has been pointed out throughout the entire event today, indeed, as well, is the challenges around globalization that has brought quite significant societal challenges as well, with increased technology that brings pressures as well. And we heard as well the economic pressures we are facing, the pandemic or which is making this worse now. But then also what we can do to overcome these pressures, and how that peer-to-peer support and that collaboration and that multi-sectorial approach is really important. And I think also we need to emphasize how prevention and anything we can do in that preventative sphere is really important before we actually end up in the curative part, where, you know, when people already fall ill, basically. That is needed as well, but we can do so much in the preventative sphere, where comparatively speaking in the past, we might not have invested as much as we should have. But I think that is becoming more and more important now. And again, the coronavirus pandemic is showing us that prevention is key, whether it's in physical health, in mental health, and in every aspect of our society. So I think that public health approach, that social approach, is really important. And I definitely agree with what you were saying in terms of what works for our students as well. So thank you for sharing that. And could I ask a question as well? Talking about cultural barriers to help seeking, for instance, issues around shame and stigma, the changing societies we are facing. We see that across the world, of course. And I was wondering, we had these student talks with our students as well, and we have students coming from all over the world. But what are, for students, within your context, what are the biggest challenges that you are facing, and how could you overcome these?
I don't get you, ma'am. Could you please ask once again?
Yes. What are the biggest challenges that you think, the student body in your university, but also within the Kerala context, what are the biggest challenges you are facing with all the changes we have seen in society and in the current pandemic? What are, for students in Kerala, what are the biggest challenges that you are facing?
Yeah, I got it now. Actually, ma'am, right now, due to the COVID pandemic, if you are asking about the COVID pandemic situation, I can say that as a academic section, we can say that we lost a lot of education time. The COVID situation, because of this situation, we can't go to colleges, and we do miss a lot of things which we were doing as a student, and I mean on offline classes and the lectures and etc. etc. And also that there is a lot of financial crisis happening around our families, societies, and everywhere. Okay, and everyone is trying to coping up with the situation, because all of us know that this COVID pandemic make a lot of differences and a lot of changes in our society and also in our families. So everybody is facing a lot of challenges, because right now in India there is a lot of things are happening also, like farmers have a lot of issues, and the marketing and the globalization and the society have a lot of changes all over the India and all over the world is happening right now. So at this situation, I think in corona, because of the corona, the students have a lot of mental struggle. And because I think they all the time they are free, because they are living in their home, they are not interacting with people, they are not going out, they are not even talking with friends, all are isolated and they are living in their own world. They are not interacting with people, they don't going out with friends, they are not even able to go to college, and everyone is confused about their profession. And for the last year students, they all are thinking about their profession. Okay, they are not getting enough placements, they are not even getting enough jobs. So everybody is confused a little bit, and also trying to get over from the pandemic. And also I can say that in Kerala, the youth is more educated. Okay, literacy level is really high here. So the people around here trying to manage the situation and trying to get over from the past situation. I think they are not thinking about the past, what is happening right now, or the what were happened in the past. More than that, they are thinking about what is future. How can we face all these things, and how can we cope up with all this situation and rise again. When Kerala faces the flood situation, I think you know the situations and all. When Kerala faces the flood, all the people are coming together and try to face all the situations, and they try to help each other to move on from the pandemic. And right now at this situation during this corona, people trying to help each other and trying to overcome the situation. And I think that's the biggest thing which we are doing right now, because we know that unity is the strength. So we try to unite, and we try to move on, and we try to face all these situations. And apart from that also, we when we the students, I think the youth thinks we are alone and we are not ready, not able to do the things. That kind of thinking and that kind of thought, because of that kind of thought, we seems like we are depressed or we can't do anything. That kind of thoughts are coming up. But when we try to understand, the thing is, when the situation is getting worse, we can move on, yeah, or we can face all these things, all these challenges with courage and with the help of others. Then the problem is getting so much easier for us. Okay, so when right now the situation is changing, and the colleges, the schools, everything is opening right now, and the people's getting connecting, people connecting with each other, the friends, our families, all are again coming together and discussing about the things and what is happening right now and what the things going on and how we can change the things. Okay, I think the youth is more concerned about the future, not the past. I think that's the biggest thing which we should do right now, because thinking about the past and what is happened in the past is not that much of a big thing. I think what we can do in the future and compensate what we lost in the past, that's the best thing we should do right now. And the youth is trying to do the same, I think so, because I discussed all these things with my friends, and they all are saying that okay, what was gone, that was gone. The time, the money, and the things which we can do on that past, the time is gone. Okay, we can't do anything about that. We can take back the time and do anything, that's impossible. So the one thing we can do right now is think about the future, think about the present, and do more things in the short times of time. So I think that's personally, I think right now that.
That's exactly the social optimism, Fatima, about the social force and social optimism that actually keeps us going. That's fantastic. But at the same time, there will be a small proportion of people, percentage of individuals who might find it hard to get that optimism in their life. That is where the cracks in our social cohesion network happens, and that is where 174 young people below 18 died of suicide during the last 1 year, no, 10 months or so. 174 young people died of suicide in during the lockdown, the pandemic. So in general, what Fatima said is, in terms of keeping the optimism, keep looking to the brighter future, trying to gather our strength to deal with tomorrow. That's fantastic. But when we are as an organization or an institution thinking, we need to think about people who might find it extremely, because they are already tired, to pull them through the to reach the optimistic road. They're already tired, they're already injured from lots of inequality, lots of difficulties. That also we need to see. And I have got another question here that has come through. Recurring suicide thoughts in someone who has no major problems, is it connected with the depression? When somebody has recurring suicide thoughts, we can't say that they haven't got any major problem. If you have recurrent, somebody has recurrent suicide problem, they do have major problems, but the outside world may not see major problem. Yeah. So you might see that a person is functioning otherwise okay, but in between they have recurring suicide thoughts. Or this can happen without depression. Yes, recurring suicide thoughts can happen without depression at all. And this is probably related to the individuals, the core self of the individual. What you may understand as personality. It is the way a person understands themselves, they interact with the outside world, and also reciprocate with the outside world. So that is what is known as the personality, the core inside, the person's core inside, which is actually making sense of themselves, who they are, and also making sense of relationship with the outside world. That is known as the function of that is the core of that is the personality of the person. So for example, if somebody had a very bad childhood where they were always felt that they were worthless, they were always ridiculed, they were always belittled, they were always called names for their body shape or how they look or how their skin color or whatever it is. If somebody has been always been emotionally or physically or sexually assaulted or bullied or abused in childhood, for example, any of those traumatic events might make that person gradually believe that they are worthless, they are not worth they are, they are not worth of others love, they are not worth, they are defective. All these kind of strong cognitive, what is known as the cognitive schema, that is the overarching thinking style of the person, because that comes from their childhood experience. In the childhood they have made to feel that they are worthless. Okay. And that might remain in their life. They might compensate by studying, doing degrees and everything to look good for the outside world, but inside they might have a very difficult inside, where they always are sensitive to any rejection, sensitive to any frustration, sensitive to any stress. So you might see this person as having no major problem from the outside point of view, but whenever stress comes, whenever rejection comes, imagined or real, they go back into their original childhood feeling state. I am worthless, and that makes them, life is not worth, and that make them suicidal. So you can see some individuals adopting or trying to harm themselves repeatedly because they don't want to live at that point. But from the outside world, you may not see they have major problems. So you might need to understand what is going inside them from their, how their childhood was, how they have managed their teen years, how they are now. So yes, the answer to the question is yes. Recurring suicide thoughts can happen in somebody who is normal to the outside world, who doesn't lost. That is true. That can happen. I hope that answered your question. That is Ardra, Reggie. Ardra, are you there? Okay, yes, yes. Okay, thank you. Any more questions? So it looks like there are no more questions coming on the chat box. Anybody want to shout any other?
There is another question, from Shijil Muhammad.
Okay, Shijil Mohammed is asking, college students and professionals are more aware of mental health problems, but those who did not have any opportunities for higher education don't know about this. How would you solve this? So the context is, within educational sector and professionals, individuals are aware of mental health problems to some extent. To some extent, if you look at even the medical doctors who are not into mental health, their awareness of mental health problems and the ability to identify mental health problems is worldwide very poor. Worldwide very poor. So we have to account that. But probably more than others, the like who has had no opportunities for education. So we have seen when we looked at the data from Kerala suicide, we know that it is the uneducated, who were not fortunate enough to get into higher education, who are overrepresented in those who die by suicide. So mental health problems and death wish, suicidal attempts, and suicide are more common in individuals who were unfortunate socially to get into higher education. So poor education means poor social position, means poor mental health. So how could you solve this? So one way to look at this is as a structural issue within the inequality in the society. Our society, even including Kerala, however, we have eradicated poverty, as I have detailed in the slide, the relative inequality is very high. Consumptional inequality is highest. And that is a reality. And how do we address the structural issues in the society? Not as psychiatrists or psychologists, or we cannot deal with that. We need to have structural solutions. We need to have social solutions. We need to have socially inclusive policies. We need to reduce inequality. So it is a class issue, social class issue that is expressed in your question. And the answer to that is we need to have a better society which is more inclusive, which is more egalitarian, which is believing in more distribution of the wealth to more people. So that is the only way. By reducing the economic inequality, we can reduce the mental health inequality. So that is one thing. Second is we all need to campaign for more resources allocated to mental health, because mental health problems are increasing across the social structure. Mental health problems are increasing across all sections of the society. And we need to campaign for more resources allocated for mental health. So a larger socio-political problem. As second is a priority problem. And third is how can charities, for example, CUSAT, you might have students union to take up a work among, to provide services to people who are less fortunate. So those of us who are fortunate to be in professional education or in universities, we might have a social responsibility to create something to provide support for individuals who are less fortunate. So these are the three solutions, three levels of solution. One is a bigger socio-political issue of structural changes to reduce inequality. Second is a prioritization issue for the state government and the national government to allocate more money to mental health. Third is our own responsibility to our fellow not fortunate enough to provide them some support networks. And did that answer your question, Shijil? And if you have any other, answers, please, we can discuss that.
I
Shijil?
would like to add something to that as well, just a couple of examples to these three key priority areas, which are hugely important indeed to address the structural issues, the financial issues, and also the community implementation of this. For people who haven't been to higher education, for instance, there are really good examples, not only from UK research, but also recently from, there is a paper that now has come out, I can circulate it actually if it's of interest, from one of our colleagues, Atif Rahman, and colleagues who work in Pakistan. And they have published around their school interventions. The primary school interventions, but also secondary school interventions, mental health programs. And there are also some really good examples of, for instance, midwives, community midwives, who will visit pregnant mothers, for instance, and who, if they are trained in basic mental health literacy, they can pass that on to the mothers as well. So there are, in the existing systems that we have, whether it's primary schooling, whether it's secondary schooling, whether it's community structures that are already there, whether it's public health midwives, ASHA workers, etc. We can task shift, we call that. So we can train people like yourself, students as well, and many others in mental health literacy to pass that on to others as well in the primary school environment, in the community environment, to parents, etc. So these are some concrete examples of some other interventions that don't involve higher education. But indeed, the key priorities are, of course, and that is more difficult to tackle, are very significant structural issues we are facing as well. That is a bit more difficult to tackle. But with these key priority areas of, as Dr. Kumar said as well, of tackling the political goodwill to tackle these structural issues, to invest more in mental health and especially in public mental health. And then where we all can contribute, as I mentioned as well, and as Dr. Kumar was saying as well, with key examples in various sectors, whether it's the workplace, there's a lot around workplace mental health and mental literacy in the workplace, where employers can take a proactive role in primary school, in secondary school, ASHA workers, public health midwives, etc. I think we can really make a very good contribution, and that is down to all of us.
Thank
so that
you.
was the addition I wanted to make to that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And there is another question coming. What are some of the signs that what are some of the signs that we can pick up from someone who might be having suicidal thoughts? As in, are there any things to look out for when we want to support those who have suicidal ideation attempts? These are the most crucial, most important question of the day. Like, how do we know that somebody is going through the difficult time? How do we know that somebody is having death wish? How do we know that somebody is contemplating putting an end to their life? This question is in detail addressed in the sport course. The sport course is actually centering around this primary question, core question, and it gives different scenarios, different settings, and we are addressing the same question in the sport course in detail. So I will not go into the details now here for want of time. I would ask all of you to log into sport course, register in the sport course, and complete the course. And what we have been discussing is, once everybody has completed the course, we can go into a next level of training, and that will link us with the third point that I was making, and Tina was also suggesting, is to look at get ourselves trained and let us help others. So we actually pass on the training to others, or make us a hub to provide some kind of listening service to not only to students in the QSAT, but for the unfortunate, what we said as the people who are not in higher education as well. So we can provide something for the city of Ernakulam, or school networks, or that's also possible. So please log into sport.inmind.in. That hyperlink is seen on the chat box, and that will take us through all the scenarios. And thank you, Hima Sebastian, for asking that.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. So is there any more question? Is it time? Dr. Ajita, are you there? Hello. Hi. I think we don't have any more questions. We can.
I have one question.
Oh, please. By all.
How can we observe that one student is having depression? How can we help the student? If we feel that he or she is depressed, what's the first step to be taken?
So, if from the peer or teacher point of view, of colleague point of view, if somebody is depressed, we covered the major signs and symptoms of what is depression. So once we suspect somebody is depressed, the first step is to establish a contact, engage with the person. So this engagement is about trying to understand the person, have a genuine interest in the person. That is the word I will use repeatedly: genuine interest in the person. Not because he is a colleague, you are managing him, or you are the professor and he is under you, but a genuine interest in the person to understand the predicament, the difficulty the person is having. So if we can actually open a genuine conversation based on our genuine interest, so first thing is engage with the person, listen to the person, as Fatima has also highlighted before, without judgment. Listen to the person. Ask questions. You have to ask questions to understand more, because in our society, because of stigma, people are unlikely to open up immediately. So you might need to do it in a face to face. You first show an interest, the person get trust in you. They know that you are reliable. They can tell everything to you. So you have to create that kind of a situation where they are able to talk to you. So engage with the person, listen to the person, validate the experience, their experience. Never try to reassure them immediately. Oh, this is not a problem. Oh, you can solve that. You are too good for that. You are strong. That doesn't help. When you say that, they might feel more, oh, I should be strong. I should not be talking about this. And others don't want me to talk about that. So facilitate the open discussion by accepting that we all have problems. Life is life comes with problems. We all have different levels of problems. We are not all perfect. So let us talk about your difficulty, and let us listen to that and validate that experience, and then ask the person, what would they like to achieve, what would they like to do. So that is guiding the person to find their strength, guide the person to find it themselves. We are not telling them, oh, you are a beautiful singer, do that more. We are not asking them. We are asking them to find it themselves. So we are acting as facilitators, as a holding a mirror to them, to allow them to see their own strength and focus on that part. And after doing this kind of interaction, you might need to think about two things. Is the depression sufficiently severe enough for you to worry about their safety? Okay, if you think that this person is at serious risk because depression is so dense, so severe that this person might think of taking their life, then you have to act immediately. You might need to take consent and talk to their family, or take consent and talk to their doctor, or encourage them to see a mental health professional, because you think that the depression has gone to a severe level where they might be at risk to themselves. That is one thing to think about. Second thing is, in some proportion of depressed individuals, they might start to believe in things that are not real. They might hear things that are not real. They might believe that everybody is against them. So that is depression going at another level. Then the person's ability to think for themselves, do the right things for themselves, is compromised, because their mind is not working rationally. So in that situation also, you need to do the step I mentioned above, like bring the family, bring the carers, bring the loved ones, and after taking consent, make sure that they get help. So if the depression is so severe, your immediate role is to hold the person and signpost them to the services, and make sure that you are supporting them through that. But in majority of cases, situations, it is about engaging with the person, genuine curiosity, unconditional regard. That's extremely important. The person should feel that they can talk, they are respected, they are listened to, they are not judged, they are not prematurely reassured. So that kind of conversation has to happen. And then keep in touch. Keep in touch, because that's the most fundamental thing that makes the other person believe that at least this person, has a genuine interest in me. So before they do something, because things can change, before they decide that life is not worth living, they might at least contact you, because they believe that here is one person who has shown genuine interest in me, unconditional regard to me, who respects my problems, and they will come to you. So that is what I would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
And to add something to that, from this is from our context, from our experience within our university, we have created, or we are in the midst of creating, a well-being hub. We call it well-being because it's wider than only mental health. It has all aspects of health included in it. And well-being also has a different ring to it. It takes away the potential stigma that's attached to the word mental health, which can create a barrier in itself. And there are additional resources for students, but also staff around their overall health, including mental health. And we have a scheme, a body scheme, which is actually what I think Fatima was talking about earlier on, which is already informally, I think, within the student organization working. But we have formally trained student champions who are trained in mental health literacy, and some others also who can act as buddies. So that's the peer support. So if someone, if for instance yourself, if a staff member has identified that there might be potentially some someone is struggling with their mental health, and if you have established, for instance, that it is not majorly severe, but that they can do with some extra support. And we have these peer support student bodies, basically, who are there to keep a special eye out. So it's a special friend, if you like, to keep a special eye out and to help with some of the routine day-to-day things, or to have give a listening ear in that non-judgmental way. And sometimes, as I mentioned earlier on, if it comes from a person from the own age group, that can sometimes be more powerful than from someone from, a staff member, for instance. We have at least experienced within our, university. So that's one of the interventions, because, as we said, it's worldwide an increasing issue amongst younger people, particularly, and we have seen that as well, an increase in mental health problems. And general challenges to young people's lives. So this is one of the interventions as part of our well-being hub that we are implementing now as well, that I wanted to share with you.
Thanks, Tina. Thank you. Thank you. And there is another question.
Thank you.
There is another question coming here. Can I read that? Is there any qualification needed to be a supporter for a depressed person? And it is Sharanya Shashi. And some people know a person is having depression, but still they are refusing to help or ignoring it. If a family member, friend, or workmate or peer person is depressed, there is no need. There is no official qualification needed. Qualification is being kind, compassionate, and genuine. These are the three qualifications we all need to have to help somebody, in distress. Be kind to yourself and to others. Be genuinely interested in the other person. And also, the third part of the question is about, it can be really taxing for the individual to support somebody else. So you also need to have some way of managing your emotions, looking after yourself, and being kind to yourself. All those things are important. So stress management, if it is stressful to you to look after, of course it is stressful to look after somebody with depression. We need to, the person who is the carer, the person who is offering the support, need to look at stress management, need to look at self-compassion, need to look at looking after themselves. Yes, these are important things. And just taking me to the earlier discussion about, students unions roles and department roles. If the Cochin Students Union is keen to do a study of mental health or well-being of their student community, or the academic department teachers are keen to study, look at the well-being of the teachers in the current circumstances. Myself, in mind, and Cambridge team has already been studying some of the same parameters in different settings. We have the tools, we have everything, running in terms of understanding a specific, in a specific context. For example, if the CUSAT Students Union want to study the mental well-being of its students, if they are interested, we would be able to support them. We would be able to provide them with all the tools, all the booklets to do the survey, and even help them with data analysis and, preparing the report for the university. We can do that. We have done it with other universities, and Institute of Mind in Thrissur take some responsibility of, doing the survey and analysis for the department. And if the teachers departments, the teachers and researchers, they want to do among staff mental health and well-being, we can do that as well. We are wide interested in the well-being of and create the models that Tina was mentioning, create some based on research, local research. So if there is a appetite for those kind of activities by the college union or the student union or the department, please by all means contact me or in mind, or we can all look into those things. We have been supporting institutions to do those, preparing localized, contextualized reports for them to act on. So we can look into those things. And
to learn from each other. I think that's important as well, isn't it? To collaborate, to co-create good health and well-being, and to learn from each other. That sharing is very important.
Is there any other question? We are almost 1 o'clock now. Is there any other question?
So there is already a question from SG. The second last one.
SG. Oh, so somebody who have no individual problems, but as a human being, they feel like life has no inherent meaning and there is no point in living. Does these kind of thoughts lead to suicide? So do we need a purpose, meaning to live a life? Okay, so purpose and meaning is key to our life, especially for a meaning, for a life well lived. We need a meaning and purpose. There are points in history where you will see some movements in society, in the history, where people are kind of alienated from the social process. The movements like hippie movements and other movements, you can say that they actually take a different path to the path taken by majority of people. And you can argue that individuals in that group are actually, in a way, existentially detached from the realities around them. They are creating their own realities. They want a different way of life. So even now, in our social life, there are people who are actually disconnected from everything around them in a philosophical way. In a meaningful way, there is no connect to the world around them. So they may not have any individual problem like mental illness or any distress, but as a human being, they might feel that what is the point in life? And often, when you study the individuals who have the idea that there is no point in living, you see lot of difficulties they have gone through. There's a lot of detachment. Why this person is so detached from their people around them? Why don't they feel any joy in human relationships? Why do they don't feel any joy in interacting with the world around them? So even though to the outside world you might see that the person doesn't see any meaning in life and they don't have a problem, that sense of detachment from outside world, lack of joy in the living, might itself indicate there are something on the backstage, something in the past, something that they have missed in the development of their mind and their life. So I agree that there are individuals in our society who feel detached from the social process, detached from the emotional world around them, detached from the human beings around them. And some individuals are like their personalities like that. They don't, enjoy the human company, enjoy anything else. They are happy in themselves. That is one group. And there is another group who is detached as well as, unhappy with the life. They don't see a purpose in life. They don't see a meaning in life. So there are individuals who are like that. But for majority of us, we need a meaning and purpose to live a life. I'm sure SG was probably asking something else. Is SG, do you want to talk about that question? Hello? That's okay. So I hope...
Yes, I would like to add something to that as well, actually. It can sometimes be even a bit tricky to define what is purpose and meaning in life. And some people might think that they have to do a big thing in life, that will contribute to their purpose and meaning. And if they can't accomplish that, then they are a failure. And that is completely wrong. it's small little things. Sometimes it's just shifting your perspective to what purpose and meaning actually means, because tiny little things that we might just take for granted, that we don't even think about. And I'm just giving you an example. This was last year, pre-corona pandemic, when we could still freely roam around here in the UK. I had a little walk to the shops, and there was a lady who looked very sad. I didn't know her at all. This was through the park I walked, and I crossed her and I smiled and I said, "Good day, madam." And she stopped. I didn't expect her to stop. She stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you just made my day just by smiling at me and acknowledging me." And I was taken aback, because for me it was such a small thing, but that really made her day. And she told me that, and that made me happy in turn as well. And it's these tiny little things that you might think don't mean perhaps very much, that can actually mean a lot to someone else at that moment in time, and that gives meaning and purpose to your life and to their life. And it's sometimes little things like that, just a listening ear to someone, just a smile and saying hello, just being there. You don't even have to do anything, your presence. Helping someone, my elderly neighbor, for instance, who can't do any shopping anymore, just helping, dropping a bag of shopping, that is profoundly meaningful and purposeful. And it's tiny little things like that. You don't have to be accomplishing goodness knows what, because sometimes people think I need to accomplish goodness knows what to give my life meaning and purpose. But that is actually in a way of thinking that can paralyze you. And it's the small little things that make your life meaningful and purposeful. And if we just shift that perspective and zoom into these tiny little things that we might otherwise take for granted, that can make a really big difference as well. And I just wanted to share that experience from my life as well. That just, gave me some perspective as well, and gave, a reminder of meaning and purpose in small little things in my life too.
Thank you. Thank you,
It
Tina.
is 13 hours.
It's about, some acts of kindness, tiny, or it might look as tiny, but the acts of kindness are more powerful than the virus that is actually, stopped our lives. Each act of kindness is like going like a virus. It will spread to others. If you are the person who Professor Van Potter was saying, might take that pleasant moment to another person. So each act of kindness can reverberate, can create, it will go viral in that sense. So acts of kindness definitely is the way to go to create some purpose and being here and here at the present moment. Another questions, is it a question or is it? Thanks to all
That's
participants.
not a question. That's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a
Thank
question, sir.
you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I think there is no more questions.
Thank
Moving
you.
on, I would like to invite Agnes Prem, Executive Member, University Union, for vote of thanks.
A very warm good evening to one and all present here. Considering the situation we are in, one cannot stress enough about the importance of mental well-being during these trying times. Suicide is indeed a difficult topic to discuss. The highly enlightening session we had just now will go a long way in addressing this issue to a greater extent. First of all, on behalf of Women's Studies Center and Cochin University Union, I would like to thank Dr. K. Madhusudan sir, Vice Chancellor, Cochin University, for inaugurating this section. Next, I would like to thank our beloved speakers, Dr. Tini Van Botten, for her informative and valuable words on the topic Global Context on Suicide Prevention, and Dr. Manoj Terail for his thought-provoking keynote address. Last but not the least, I would like to thank Dr. K. Ajda, Director, Women's Studies Center, and all our beloved viewers for making this function a grand success. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you all.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.